In this video, I want to go over the reprojection software and how to use it. So the first thing that you want to do is take this Reprojector program and drag it into, you can't drag this, copy it into the folder that has your original GoPro videos. And it's not too big, it's like 60 megabytes, so it's okay to keep multiple copies of this around. There's no information that's going to be stored in this, so feel free to move this from folder to folder, but then basically you'll just open it up. Okay, so when this gets going, you'll notice that kind of things are changing over here, and the first stage of this whole process is actually just to wait. Depending on how many files you have, it might be a few hours of waiting. One way to use this whole program would be to not do any editing or viewing at all, and you could just, as soon as you open this up, hit Add All, and then render out 3 clips. And then when it goes through the stages automatically, it'll actually smooth everything out according to the defaults. Most of the time, though, I think it'd be better. I don't know. You could use it that way, and you can still open this up, and maybe there's some clips that didn't come out in a way that you like, so you can come back to this and re-render out those clips. So that's actually. This hasn't started, so I could still remove all these if I want. But then, yeah, you'll first wait for these proxy media to be created, and then once those are done, you'll start optical analysis. Let's just skip ahead to that step. Okay, this is the next time-consuming waiting phase of the project, which is each video needs to be gone through, and we're doing optical flow over the whole video to get a sense, separate from the motion data that was saved, how the camera was moving. It's also a time, if you want, you can kind of see what your footage looks like. But there's obviously easier ways to do that than this. But this is just another thing you'll have to wait for. So now let's take another look at file structure here. So Reprojector hasn't saved any data. Everything that's been saved is now in this new folder that it's created called the name of the enclosing folder, Reprojected. It's important that you keep the names of these folders and files the same, because Reprojector will be expecting to find certain name files in a certain location relative to the rest of the project. When you've finished and rendered things out, they'll show up here. For now, the software will only render out proxy video. This is the source proxy files that it used to create these. You can see that these are just smaller versions of the original video. So it's going to be using those internally, so that things are a bit faster. And finally, there's the reprojection data. And this is going to be a bunch of information that's stored about each of the clips that you edited. So if you want to make sure that your data is saved, this is the thing to keep around. The rendered proxy, and there'll also be rendered master, the source proxy. These are kind of big files because they're videos. But this data should be relatively low size. Geez, that's pretty big. I guess there's a lot of flow information in here, but that's what you need to kind of keep around to, if, say, you wanted to, rather than sending us all the stabilized footage, but that you made edits on and corrections to how the camera was projected, You send us the original source media, and then you also send us the reprojection data. And if you do that, then we can recreate, we can stabilize the project the exact same way that you had it corrected to using the larger media. Okay, so once your video clips have all had their proxies created and they've been analyzed optically, they are ready to edit. So we'll just select which one we want to take a look at, and it'll just pop up and start playing. You'll notice that unlike before in the analysis stage, the video now has this kind of bow tie shape to it. That's because we are taking out the fisheye nature of the clip and we are putting it in rectilinear space. So this is actually a whole 3D projection, and we've now figured out how the camera is moving. So we have this rectangle relative to the clip that's moving around to create the smooth video that we want. You can see we've got this timeline on the bottom that we can scrub around in. We can start and stop with spacebar. As you hold down the Z key and you just move your cursor forward or up or down, I guess. So we can change which clip we're looking at pretty quickly and move around. So I've got 3 clips here. The idea is that you'll kind of go through these one by one, get it to the way that you want, and once you're all done, you'll add them to the render queue and render out the final versions. And note that now, because we rendered out the proxy media, this video file is not as high a resolution as the video that we're actually working with. That'll help us edit things quicker, but yeah, note that you will get higher resolution at the end of this. So let's go through the controls. These first 2 settings are just really for us viewing this thing. This is if we want to. Actually, before I get into that, let's start with this basic timeline. So right now we're in zoom mode, and we've got this kind of spline that we can add points to and adjust the control that is corresponding to the buttons push. So right now we're adjusting the zoom, and because this is a spline, I can select different points on this line, and you'll see that those are basically controlling the parameter that we're looking at. So going back to this follow zoom, really what that's doing is we're locking the player view to the actual zoom here. So it won't look like that rectangle's getting bigger. It'll just look like we're actually zooming in or out. So this is a good way to look at what the rendered product will actually be like. The other thing that we can do is we can hit the Remember Background button. And what that does is, first, it's all red here. You can see that we're actually kind of writing in the last thing that we saw. So this is really helpful in cases where maybe you're worried that you'd like to zoom out a little bit, but the edge of this clip is going to be popping into your field of view a little bit. So you want to make sure that that doesn't look too weird. So show smooth behavior settings. So you can delete these nodes by hitting the delete key. If you delete them all, it'll go back to its default value, which in this case is 72. I don't have a way for you to set defaults yet, but I think the defaults that I start out with will try to be pretty good. The other things that you can change are the direction. And this is doing really a rotation in 3D space rather than just an X or Y shift. So these are, the units here are in degrees. And you can use this to reposition your smooth camera. Maybe you want it to turn through this sequence here. That's what will happen. So let's delete these. Another way that you can adjust these values, if maybe you're having trouble like just dragging it to exactly where you want, you can actually do a 2-finger, if you're using like a touchpad, a 2-finger scroll up or down, or if you've got a scroll wheel, you can scroll, and that will do a fine adjustment to the value at that node. If you want to adjust the time that it happens, which is probably pretty unusual, but you can hold down Shift and scroll, and that will keep the time fixed, but so if I hold down Shift, it changes the time. If I just scroll, it'll just change the value. Okay. So that's great. Another thing I can do is if I've got multiple nodes, I can jump between them by hitting the left and right arrows. That'll also move the playhead, well, not the playhead, but the view head, which is this narrower vertical bar, to that different location, just to give me a kind of a preview of what the whole thing looks like at each of these points. And I can delete them all by hitting the delete key if I want. Everything that you do to modify this thing will be saved automatically as you do it. So just know that you don't have like a save command, and that you don't have to worry about saving it. Just like the changes you make are, immediate and permanent. There's no undo feature yet. So just treat it like, I don't know, you can redo things that you messed up, but it's going to be saving everything as you go. So before you actually get to these manual corrections, in a lot of cases you won't need these because the smoother works pretty well just by itself. There's some controls here that you might care about. The first one is lock to level, or just level horizon here. So what this is doing is it's using the gravity information that was captured in the motion data to make sure that the camera is, if you want it to be, always pointed up. So the camera, when it was being filmed, it looks like it was maybe a little bit to the right here, but if I've got that checked, it will be level. The other one is level incline. This is another one you might want. If you don't want the camera to look up or down at all, you always want it to be level. Maybe your path is level and you're afraid that when you're filming it, you might have been pointing the camera too high or too low. You can hit this level incline, and that will make sure that we're always pointed the camera straight ahead in this case. Typically by default I have level horizon on, but level incline turned off. Especially if you're going up or down hills or up or down stairs, it doesn't really make sense to use level incline because you actually do want the camera to be kind of moving up and down with the slope of the terrain. But in some cases you might want it. Show smooth behavior settings. So these are settings that you should figure out probably before you do any of these manual edits. What happens is that when you click this, you see that there are now extra lines on here. These lines are determining some of the behavior. It might be easier actually to see in this clip what these are doing. So the smoothing algorithm is trying to always keep, it'll be easier to see without this, the edges of our display mesh outside of these bumpers. So if I want the thing to be more smooth, I can actually move these bumpers in, and I can hit apply tolerances, and this will, you'd have to kind of redo these if you wanted them just the way you wanted in relation to what this is set at. So let's hit this button. Now let's watch this again. that. I just want to move the playhead here. So you can see that now the edges are coming quite a bit further into this rectangle. So this location, let's now say, oh well, we didn't really want it to be that far out. We could adjust these again. Let's make sure that the camera view actually stays outside of here. This will result in a less smooth video, but we will are less likely to go. It looked like QuickTime lost the rest of my video screen recording, so I'm going to pick up from here. Basically, I was showing you the smoothness as it moves through here, how these different bars affect the smoothness. You can turn level horizon on or off. In some cases, it's going to have you find a location where things are kind of, even if we've got these tolerances outside our box in this case, and we apply these tolerances, we'll still actually get the edges of this, the view we want to see in the view that we're rendering out. And in this case, it's mostly because we've got level horizon turned on, because these things kind of happen after your smooth path. So it's like with these tolerances on, it's kind of the first step. They're making sure that the render or the virtual camera path is following the real camera path. But then we're saying after that, okay, you've got your smooth path, but actually I want to keep the horizon level. So in cases like this are ones that, like if you wanted to keep this shot and you didn't want to show this background, you might do something like, at this point, like let's change the zoom. So maybe right here we want to be zoomed in, and okay, outside of that area we want to zoom back out again. And we can kind of see what that looks like by playing through it. You can see, I don't know, it's not perfect, everything was kind of moving at once, but maybe if I turn this on, turn that on, maybe that'll look okay. I think I've messed up the remember background at this point, but you get the idea, I think. Okay, and the other thing, just to get you an idea of how this works, like if I was going to turn these values all the way to 0 and turn level horizon off, what I'd actually be seeing is that there's no stabilization to the video at all. I've got no tolerance, so I'm not letting there be any wiggle kind of between the real camera and the smooth camera. So really all I'm doing is de-fisheyeing the video in this case. And I've got controls for how to move things. But if I wanted to just take out just the high frequency wiggle, I could just turn these down a little bit. Apply. And so we're still like, we're not cropping in much at all in this case, but the small amount of crop that we are doing is allowing us to get a much smoother shot than the original. But I'll keep these defaults set. Okay, the final thing that you should kind of know about is, well, you can leave notes for yourself if you wanted to. I want to like elaborate this software to let you do different things, like tag different locations with different types of scenics or maybe trail facts or something. But for now, you can just write whatever you want. But this will get saved along with the other stuff. Once you are happy with all your edits to the videos in your queue, you could add them all one by one, kind of as you go. If maybe you just want to render out a few of them, you can select this in render queue toggle individually, or you could just add them all to the queue and then hit the render out button. And then you'll be back, and again, I've messed up the remember smooth layer thing here since my last video, but you'll hit render out 3 clips and it'll go through the videos. You'll have to wait for them one by one to go through the whole process. But when you're done, let's just close it. When you're done, you will find the videos probably in rendered proxy, or if you're rendering out master files, which is not a feature I've included yet, it'll be in a different folder called rendered master. And these videos are in fact your smooth videos. So yeah, that's how you use this software to smooth out your videos, and I hope that you were able to follow all of that. But if not, feel free to send me any questions you have or follow up with an email. Thanks for watching, and happy editing.